This morning, we're going to continue our sermon series on good advice. And Pastor Kellen and I are kind of doing a tag team effort on this one, which I am excited about that I get to be a part of it. He started last week, and he'll be here doing the continuing the series next week, and then I will finish up the following week. And I'm especially excited that the subject that I picked, or the advice that I picked, was some advice that I got from my dad. Being that is Father's Day, I thought that was kind of appropriate, and I was kind of excited that I was able to share that with you guys today. I got the advice from my dad on May 20th, 1995. And there's a couple reasons why I know exactly that date. First of all, on May 20th, 1995, I was 20 years old. So if you want to do the math, I'm 44 now. I was 40 pounds lighter than I am today. So the medium t-shirts that sometimes I wear fit very, very loosely when I was 40 pounds lighter. But I was a skinny 20-year-old kid. I didn't go to college. I was deciding that I was going to go be in the military. So I remember that May 20th was the day that my dad gave this advice to me. I'm kind of a date nerd. I like having dates. I like it when Facebook tells you that 3 years ago you had this status, or 5 years ago you had this picture. I always think that's cool. You can ask my wife. I tell her all the time, "Did you know what happened 3 years ago today?" And she's like, "No, I don't know." And I'll be like, "Look, it says Facebook." So that's just what I do. I love dates. You're going to see that theme as we go through the service. So I was leaving that morning to go to Army basic training. I woke up, and it was really early, like 3 o'clock in the morning when we got up to leave. I still lived at home, the only house I'd ever lived in, on Davis Mill Road in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Mom and Dad and I, we got up, and we got in my dad's SS Monte Carlo, and we drove from Lawrenceville to downtown Atlanta. And I remember, normally that's about a 40-minute drive in the morning, and it was the quickest 40 minutes. Like, I felt like we left and we were downtown. Like, I was hoping that it was going to take longer. I was praying that there was something in my file that somehow was going to not let me have to go. Like, I remember I signed up, I volunteered. I wasn't drafted like my dad was in the 60s. There wasn't like a war going on. It was it was a pretty calm time to be joining the military. But I was scared, and I didn't want to go to basic, and I was very worried about what the next 6 weeks of my life were going to be like. I remember thinking to myself, if they find out that maybe I had flat feet and they just missed it, or I had a bad knee, or they don't allow people with brown eyes in the military in May, whatever I could do to get out of going in is what I was hoping for. And we got to Atlanta, and I got out of the car, and my mom gave me a hug, and my dad gave me a hug. My dad's a very talkative person. If you're ever in line at a grocery store or Taco Bell, he's going to talk to you. He's going to make fun of you. He's just that kind of person. There's no strangers to my dad. And he also is very free with his advice. He will give advice to anybody at any time, whether you ask or not. If you ask him for your advice, I've learned this, if you ask him for his advice and you don't take his advice, he gets really upset. So I've learned, just don't ask for his advice, because that way he can't say, "Well, you asked me and then you didn't do it." Because usually I'm just kind of looking for the answer that I want. So my dad had been really quiet the whole morning, and I remember I give him a hug, and he looks up at me, and I say that because my dad's 5'4", so hopefully he's watching this in a couple of days. My dad, he looks up at me, and he gives me the advice, and he said, "Casey, this is temporary." And I remember thinking, "Wait, what do you mean? I'm going to basic training." And he goes, "The next 6 weeks of your life are temporary. When you look back, when you're 70, 80 years old, and you look back on your life, that this 6-week period of time, as tough as it's going to be, is just a small piece of time. It's a flash in the pan. It's a blip on the radar of what your entire life is going to be. remember that this is temporary. And I held on to those words throughout basic training, and I've tried to apply that to my life whenever I've had a difficult time or a time of struggle or a time when things were difficult. I try to remember that my dad said, this is temporary. This is not going to last forever. So the verse that I want to read is from 2 Corinthians chapter 4. It's verse 16 through 18. And you can follow along with your Pew Bibles or on your phones. But I'm going to read it for you. And I'm going to read the NIV version because of some of the wording in it. And it fits with what I'm trying to talk about this morning. So 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 through 18. And this is Paul talking. He says, therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving us for eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. The phrase which starts off with, do not lose heart, therefore we do not lose heart. In my research, there was a Greek word that they translate that from. I cannot tell you what that Greek word is because I don't know how to pronounce it. And Google couldn't tell me how to pronounce it either. But you got to trust me that there's a Greek word that was come from. And the other translations of do not lose heart are despair, do not despair, or do not become weary. Paul is telling us that the troubles that we have here on earth are achieving us for eternal glory. That basically we will grow from the struggles that we have, that we will learn from the struggles we have, and someday we're going to have rewards in heaven that will far outweigh what the struggles that we're going through here on earth are like. Like basic training, that it sometimes can be hard, it can be a struggle, but at the end of that tough time, hopefully you come out stronger, a little wiser, maybe you can do more push-ups. That those things that we struggle with in life will help us grow. So I want to give a couple examples, and these are some things that I have had in my life, and hopefully some things that maybe you can relate to. This is not me saying, woe is me, I've had a tough life. I'm a very blessed man, and I look back on a couple of these things I want to talk about, and they've built who I am today, and when they were going on, they didn't feel very temporary. But that's what we're trying to remember, is that that there's going to be a better outcome after you get through. So the first example I want to give is divorce. I decided that my first marriage I wanted to walk away from about 7-8 years ago. I struggled very hard with that decision. That time in my life did not feel very temporary going through it. I struggled with feeling like I failed as a husband, as a father, and I stopped going to church. I stopped praying. I really struggled with the decision that I made to walk away from my marriage. And I know that now I can look back on it and remember that was a temporary time, but when going through it, it can be very disheartening. And I was on this website called Match.com. It's a dating website. And on May 20th, just like May 20th, 1995, on May 20th, 2013, this green-eyed girl from Fort Atkinson winked at me. Now, if you don't know how Match.com works, if you get winked at, that means that the person looked at your profile, They read your profile, they saw your pictures, they liked what you saw, then you winked at that person. And this green-eyed girl from Fort Atkinson did that. And I checked out her profile and her pictures, and I winked back. And over the next 4 days, we texted a lot and messaged a lot and then had a lot of phone calls. And after 4 days, we went on one date to Salamoni's in Fort Atkinson. And we never really went on a second date. We just kind of were Casey and Stacy from that point on. The struggles of a divorce and feeling like I was unworthy and feeling like a failure as a father and a husband quickly evaporated when I met Stacy. And we became stronger as a couple, and we became stronger in God together. And I appreciate the fact that maybe the time going through divorce was tough, but the outcome was very good after I met Stacy. Another example is I lost a job on October 31st, 2014. I got let go from the company I was with, and over the next several months, I had jobs, but they were temporary. They didn't end up lasting, and I felt like a failure and like I wasn't providing for my family like I should, and felt very down about what I was going through as far as being as a worthy employee, as was I good enough. And over the next couple months, I ended up driving a garbage truck, which a lot of you guys know that. I drove a garbage truck for a couple of years. I will tell you that driving a garbage truck is not a fun job. It's a hard job. It's a smelly job. And the couple of years that I spent doing that, looking back now, I didn't see it at the time, but it was a temporary step for me to know that I can work hard and that I'm not too good for any job. I was a service manager, and then before that I was a project manager. And I felt like I was a manager. I should be a manager, not driving a garbage truck. Sometimes those lessons that we learn in life can be a little humbling and can help us learn that you can work hard and you can get through, and it's temporary when you go through those struggles. And it definitely makes me appreciate the job that I have now, the company that I work for, and the people I work with. I feel very fortunate, and I feel very blessed. And I look back on that time, and I can realize now, that it was temporary, the time where I struggled with jobs. This example I added to my sermon literally last night. It was something I wasn't going to talk about. And like I said, this is not me saying woe is me and I've had a difficult life, but I want to just bring examples of some things that each one of us can relate to. This one's a little different. On April 3rd, 2000, I was at home, and a tornado hit my house. And when I say hit my house, ripped the roof off, took the house off the foundation, and set it back down off of the foundation. I was home. My 3-month-old daughter, Dallas, which you guys have seen Dallas here, she was 3 months old, and she was in her crib across the hall. I ran across the hall, picked her up, ran into the basement. We were completely fine, not a scratch on us. The house was pretty much destroyed. They took it down, basically had to completely rebuild the whole house. The 6 months from the time of that tornado to the time that we moved back into the house felt like forever to me. We had to deal with insurance companies and contractors and get bids and rebuild the house and buy new furniture and put stuff in storage and live in an apartment. And while everyone else's life kind of went on like normal, I remember being very angry that people didn't realize that what we were going through. and that we were struggling. But like I said, it was a temporary thing. And after that, I have come to appreciate the house that I live in, that God kept me safe, He kept my daughter safe, and He continued to bless me. And I learned a lot through that time. The last example I want to use is probably the toughest one. And it's especially tough to think about losing a loved one, especially on Father's Day. My dad is still around, but I know there's a lot of people that don't have their dads with them, and that can be especially hard on Father's Day. I had an uncle pass away last September, and my dad's older brother, Terry, and I'm thinking about my cousins, Jennifer and Jake, that this is their first Father's Day without their dad. And I know that the title of "This is Temporary" doesn't feel temporary when we lose a loved one. That's the one that's the toughest, because it doesn't feel temporary. They're gone. They're gone from our lives. But what I want to encourage you is that you will see them again. If you have faith, if you believe in that, you'll see them again in heaven. On September 20th, 1987, my little sister, Nikki, she died at age 7. She had cancer. And I remember that day extremely well. That's why I have her name tattooed on my arm. I remember watching, I was 12 years old when she passed away, and I remember looking at the 13 months that she had cancer and the struggles that she went through and the chemotherapy and the surgeries. And it's difficult to say that that was temporary, looking back on that now. I watched my parents go through that. When my daughters got to age 7, I remember being very, very, I remember calling my dad and saying, "Dad, how did you get through that? How did you get through that time when Nikki was sick?" And his answer was simply, it was God. There was no other way to get through that period of time other than the grace of God. I know that when you lose someone like a family member, it does feel permanent, but remember that you will see them again someday, that God is good, that when we are missing someone, that it gives us a chance to appreciate the people that we have in our lives, that we can appreciate the people that we have around us. So as we close here, I want you to think about the hard times that you've had in life, the difficulties, and think about how you came out the other side. Look back on a time that was a struggle and remember that you made it through, and how God was able to be there for you and to help you. Whether you have addiction issues or anger issues, whether you can't sleep at night or you can't have a baby, whether you're going through a divorce or whether you're going through depression, whether you're having sickness right now or you're going to have a surgery, whether you're underpaid or you're unemployed, whether your kids are going through their terrible twos or your teenagers have the teenage attitude. Remember that the Bible says, do not lose heart. And that my dad said that this is temporary. Will you pray with me?